I am Sarah Jenkins, 32, and on my wedding night, I discovered my entire life was a lie carefully constructed to steal a fortune. Before I tell you how I destroyed his empire with a single USB drive, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love reading your stories. The champagne in the silver bucket was sweating. I remember staring at a single droplet of water sliding down the cold metal, tracing a path through the condensation. It was the only thing moving in the room. The honeymoon suite at the Ritz-Carlton was everything a bride is supposed to dream of. There were rose petals scattered across the California king bed, so many of them that the white duvet looked like it was bleeding. The air smelled thick with expensive tuberose and vanilla candles. It was perfect. It was suffocating. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my wedding dress. My feet were throbbing. I had spent 6 hours standing in Jimmy Choo heels that cost more than my first car, smiling until my cheeks felt like stiff plastic. I was Mrs. Ethan Sterling now. The wife of the heir apparent. The woman who had tamed the city's most eligible bachelor. That's what they whispered during the reception. "You're a lucky girl, Sarah," his aunt had told me, gripping my arm a little too tightly. "Don't mess this up." I looked over at Ethan. He was standing by the window, loosening his bow tie with a jerk of his wrist. He didn't look like a man who had just married the love of his life. He looked like a man who had just finished a long, boring board meeting and was desperate to clock out. He was staring at his reflection in the dark glass, checking his hair. "Ethan?" I said softly. He didn't turn around. "What? Are you okay? You seem distant." He finally turned, flashing that $1,000,000 smile that had charmed me 3 years ago. It was the smile that made waitresses stumble and business partners sign bad deals. But for the first time, I noticed it didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were cold, calculating. "I'm fine, babe," he said, walking past me toward the door. "Just wired. Adrenaline, you know?" He patted my shoulder. He didn't kiss me. He didn't tell me I looked beautiful. He patted me like I was a golden retriever that had successfully fetched a stick. "I need to run down to the reception hall," he said, checking his pockets theatrically. "I think I left my phone at the head table. I need to grab it before the staff clears everything." "I can call the concierge," I offered, reaching for the hotel phone on the nightstand. "They can bring it up." "No," he snapped. The sharpness in his voice made me flinch. He cleared his throat, softening his tone instantly. "No, I mean, I want to check on something else anyway. A surprise for you. I'll be 20 minutes. You, get comfortable." He grabbed his room key card and slipped out the door before I could say another word. The heavy door clicked shut, leaving me alone in the silence of the suite. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. My intuition was prickling at the back of my neck. It was a physical sensation, a cold shiver that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. As a project manager, my brain is wired to notice details. To track inconsistencies. To solve problems before they become disasters. And something about Ethan's story didn't fit. I stood up and walked over to the side of the bed where he had been tossing his jacket earlier. I lifted the plush-down pillow. There it was. His iPhone 14 Pro Max. It was sitting right there, face down on the sheets. He hadn't forgotten his phone. He had lied. On our wedding night, within hours of saying "till death do us part," my husband looked me in the eye and lied to my face so he could leave the room. My heart started to hammer against my ribs. A rational woman might have thought he was going to get a surprise gift, maybe seeing a friend off. But I wasn't just rational, I was observant. I had seen the looks all night. The glances that lingered a second too long. The way my maid of honor, Chloe, had touched his arm during the toasts. I grabbed his phone. Locked, of course. I put it back exactly how I found it. I shouldn't follow him. That's what the terrified voice in my head said. "Don't go looking for trouble, Sarah. Just take off the dress, wait for him, be the good wife. But my feet were already moving. I didn't take off the dress. I didn't put on shoes. I walked out of the honeymoon suite barefoot, the expensive silk of my gown swishing softly against the carpeted hallway. The hallway was empty. It was nearly 1 a.m. The sconces on the wall cast long, eerie shadows. I walked past the elevators. He hadn't gone down to the reception hall. If he had, I would have heard the elevator ding. He was still on this floor. There were only 4 suites on this exclusive floor. Ours was at the end. The one next to us was empty. The one across the hall was occupied by Ethan's parents. And the one at the far end. The suite reserved for the bridal party. Specifically, the suite Chloe insisted on having to herself because she needed space to organize the gifts. I walked toward it. My steps were silent. Every nerve in my body was screaming at me to turn back, to run away, to pretend I was stupid. But I kept walking. As I got closer, I heard it. A sound that made my stomach drop all the way to my bare feet. Laughter. It wasn't the polite laughter of guests saying goodbye. It was intimate. Low. Throat deep. It was my husband's laugh. And then, a woman's voice joined him. High-pitched, giggling, familiar. It was the voice of the woman who had held my hand while I cried over my grandmother's death. The woman who had zipped up my dress 4 hours ago and told me I looked like a princess. Chloe. The door to Chloe's suite wasn't fully closed. The latch hadn't caught properly. There was a gap, barely an inch wide, sending a sliver of warm, yellow light slicing across the dim hallway carpet. I stood frozen in the shadows, pressing myself against the wall. My breath was shallow, coming in short, painful gasps. I felt like an intruder in my own life. God, finally, Chloe's voice drifted through the crack. I thought she'd never let you leave. She's so clingy. She's not clingy, she's useful, Ethan's voice replied. The tone was dismissive, arrogant. It was a tone I had never heard him use when speaking about me, at least not to my face. But yeah, getting away was a hassle. Had to pull the forgot my phone card. You are terrible, Chloe giggled. There was the sound of a zipper being pulled down, the rustle of fabric. Did she buy it? Sarah buys everything I sell her, Ethan scoffed. She's a project manager, not a detective. She sees spreadsheets, not people. That's why she's perfect for this. I felt bile rise in my throat. My hands were shaking so hard I had to press them against the cool wallpaper to steady myself. Perfect for what? Pour me a drink, Chloe said. To us. And to the end of the good wife act. To us, Ethan said. I heard the clink of glasses. And to the countdown. 6 months, babe. Just 6 months. 6 months is a long time to watch you play house with her, Chloe whined. I hate seeing you hold her hand. It makes me sick. It's necessary, Ethan's voice dropped lower, becoming serious. You heard my dad at the rehearsal dinner. A man who can't manage a family can't manage a company. He's old school. He won't hand over the CEO position to a bachelor, and he definitely won't hand it over to a playboy. He needs to see stability. He needs to see Sarah. I stopped breathing. The world tilted on its axis. She's just my ticket to the CEO seat, Ethan said, his voice crystal clear. Once Dad signs the papers and the board confirms my appointment next week, the clock starts. I play the devoted husband for half a year to secure the public image. Then, we drift apart. Irreconcilable differences. I keep the title, I keep the money, and I dump her boring ass. And you get me, Chloe purred. And I get you, Ethan agreed. Then, the sounds changed. The clink of glasses was replaced by wet, sloppy kissing. The creak of the bed. The sounds of my husband and my best friend celebrating their victory over my stupidity. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and stinging, but they didn't fall. A strange thing happens when you are betrayed this deeply. The pain is there, massive and crushing, but something else rises up to meet it. A cold, hard rage. They thought I was boring? They thought I was just a spreadsheet reader? I reached into the pocket of my silk dress, yes, I chose a dress with pockets, thank God, and pulled out my phone. My hands were still trembling, but my fingers knew what to do. I opened the camera app. I switched to video. I stepped closer to the gap in the door. Through the sliver of space, I could see them. Chloe was sitting on the edge of the desk, still in her champagne-colored bridesmaid dress, though the straps were down. Ethan was standing between her legs, his tuxedo jacket gone, his shirt unbuttoned. I hit the red record button. I filmed them kissing. I filmed Chloe laughing as she ran her hands through his hair. Wait, Chloe said, pulling back slightly. What about the prenup? Won't she get a payout? Ethan laughed. It was a cruel, ugly sound. What payout? The prenup has a cheating clause, sure, but she'll never catch me. Plus, I'm moving assets around. By the time we divorce, on paper, I'll be broke. She'll get half of nothing. And the best part? I'm going to make her sign off on the investments I'm making this week. If the money disappears, it'll look like her fault. She manages the books, remember? My blood ran cold. This wasn't just adultery. This was a setup. They weren't just planning to leave me, they were planning to destroy me. They were going to frame me for financial ruin while they walked away with the Sterling family empire. I kept recording. I needed every word. I needed his face. I needed her laugh. You're a genius, Ethan, Chloe said, kissing his neck. I know, he replied. And you're going to look great spending my money. I watched for another 30 seconds, until I felt like I was going to physically vomit. I hit stop on the recording. I checked to make sure it's saved. Then, I backed away. 1 step. 2 steps. Silent as a ghost. I turned and walked back down the hallway. I didn't run. Running makes noise. I walked with the precision of a woman who just realized she was walking on a minefield. I reached our suite, my suite, and slipped inside, locking the door behind me. I leaned against the heavy wood, my legs finally giving out. I slid down to the floor, my expensive dress pooling around me like a cloud. I looked at the phone in my hand. The little thumbnail of the video was there. Ticket to CEO, I whispered to the empty room. I wasn't a ticket. I was the conductor. And I was about to derail their entire train. But first, I had to get out of here. I couldn't sleep in that bed. I couldn't let him touch me. Not tonight. Not ever again. Panic is a loud, messy emotion. But survival? Survival is quiet. Survival is efficient. I didn't pack a suitcase. Dragging a suitcase through the lobby at 1:30 a.m. in a wedding dress would draw attention. I needed to disappear without leaving a trail that Ethan could follow immediately. I went to the closet. My go-bag for the honeymoon was there, a sleek leather tote with my passport, my laptop, my wallet, and a change of clothes for the flight to Italy the next day. I grabbed it. I stripped off the wedding dress. I didn't hang it up. I let it fall to the floor in a heap of white silk and lace. It looked like a dead thing. I pulled on a pair of jeans and a gray oversized sweater. I shoved my feet into sneakers. I looked at the diamond ring on my finger. A 3-carat oval cut that Chloe had helped him pick out. It sparkled under the hotel lights, mocking me. I started to pull it off, but stopped. No. If I took it off now, he would know I knew. If he came back and found the ring on the nightstand, the game would be over before I was ready. I needed time. I needed a plan. I kept the ring on. I turned the stone inward so it scratched against my palm, a sharp reminder of the pain. I grabbed my car keys. I didn't take the elevator. I took the service stairs, walking down 4 flights to the parking garage. The concrete stairwell was cold and smelled of cleaning chemicals. It was a stark contrast to the lavender-scented air of the suite upstairs. My car, a reliable Honda Accord that I had bought with my own bonuses, was parked in the corner. Not the flashy Porsche Ethan drove. Just a sensible car for a sensible Sarah. I drove. I didn't know where I was going at first. I just headed towards the highway, watching the city lights blur into streaks of neon. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Ethan, babe, sorry, got caught up talking to Uncle Jerry. Coming up now. You awake? The audacity. The absolute, unadulterated evil of this man. He was texting me while probably still buttoning his shirt in Chloe's room. I didn't reply. I drove for an hour, putting 50 miles between me and the Ritz-Carlton. I pulled into the parking lot of a Sleepy's motel off the interstate. Ideally, I would have gone to my parents' house, but they were staying at the Ritz too. I couldn't face them. Not yet. The motel room smelled like stale cigarettes and lemon pledge. The carpet was sticky. The neon sign outside buzzed with an angry, "Elector come." It was the furthest thing from a honeymoon suite imaginable, and it was exactly what I needed. I locked the door, threw the deadbolt, and put the chain across. Only then did I let myself fall apart. It wasn't a graceful cry. It was ugly. I curled up on the lumpy mattress, burying my face in a pillow that felt like it was filled with rocks, and screamed. I screamed until my throat felt raw. I sobbed until my chest hurt, gasping for air like a drowning woman. Memories assaulted me, playing like a horror movie montage in my brain. I saw Chloe 3 months ago, helping me address invitations. Oh Sarah, you're so lucky. Ethan is just intense. In a good way. I remembered the way she looked at him when she thought I wasn't watching. I had thought it was admiration. I had thought she was happy for me. I saw Ethan at Christmas. He had given me a diamond necklace. To my future, he had said. I thought he meant our future. He meant his future as CEO. I remembered the times he canceled date nights for work emergencies. The times he was protective of his phone. The times Chloe was busy on the same nights Ethan was working late. I had been so stupid. So incredibly, willfully blind. I had built my entire identity around being the supportive partner. I had managed his schedule, organized his life, balanced his checkbooks, and smoothed over his social gaffes. I had made myself indispensable, just like he wanted. And they were laughing at me. Boring. Spreadsheet reader. The tears eventually stopped, leaving me hollowed out. I lay on the cheap bedspread, staring at a water stain on the ceiling that looked like a distorted face. I pulled my laptop out of my bag. I needed to see. I logged into our joint bank account. Ethan had said he was moving assets around. I clicked on the transaction history. My breath caught. There were transfers. Huge ones. $10,000 here, $15,000 there. All going to a shell company called CM Consulting. CM Chloe Miller. And then I saw it. The account authorization. My digital signature was on the approval documents for the transfers. He had used my iPad, my passwords. He had framed me perfectly. If the IRS or the board looked at this, it wouldn't look like Ethan was stealing. It would look like Sarah Jenkins, the project manager wife, was siphoning money. He wasn't just going to divorce me. He was going to send me to prison. The fear that had been gripping me suddenly evaporated. In its place, a cold, hard resolve settled in my chest. It was the feeling I got when a project was failing, and I had to step in and fix it. I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the project manager. And this? This was just another project gone wrong that needed to be corrected. I sat up. I wiped my face. I wasn't going to sleep. I had work to do. The sun rose over the motel parking lot, casting a harsh, unforgiving light on the cracked asphalt. I hadn't slept a wink. My eyes felt gritty, like they were full of sand, but my mind was razor sharp. At 7 a.m. sharp, I dialed a number I hadn't used in years. Vance, a gravelly voice answered on the second ring. Mr. Vance was an old friend of my father's. He wasn't just a lawyer, he was a shark in a three-piece suit. He handled high-stakes corporate litigation and nasty divorces for the city's elite. He had retired 2 years ago, but sharks never really stop swimming. Mr. Vance, it's Sarah Jenkins. Arthur Sterling's daughter-in-law. Or. I was supposed to be. Sarah? His voice lost its sleepiness. It's 7 a.m. on a Sunday. You got married yesterday. Why aren't you on a plane to Italy? Because my husband is sleeping with my maid of honor, and they are embezzling money from the Sterling Corporation using my digital signature, I said. I didn't stutter. I didn't cry. I laid it out like a bullet point. There was a silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence. Then, the sound of a lighter clicking and a deep inhale. Start from the beginning, he said. I told him everything. The phone under the pillow. The conversation at the door. The video. The bank transfers I found last night. The ticket to CEO comment. You have the video? Vance asked. Backed up to the cloud and saved on 3 different USB drives, I confirmed. Good girl, he grunted. Listen to me very carefully, Sarah. Do not file for divorce. Not yet. What? I gripped the phone tighter. Mr. Vance, I can't stay with him. If you leave now, you're just a scorned wife, Vance cut me off. He'll spin the narrative. He'll say you're crazy, jealous. And with those bank transfers under your name, he holds the leverage. He can threaten to expose your theft if you try to take his money. So what do I do? We flip the board, Vance said. I could practically hear him smiling, a predatory grin. He needs you for the CEO appointment, right? That's next week? Yes. Thursday. Then you give him exactly what he wants. You go back there. You play the happy wife. You go on that honeymoon. You smile, you wave, you let him think he's won. Meanwhile, we build a case so airtight that when we drop the hammer, he won't just lose his marriage. He'll lose his freedom. My stomach turned at the thought of pretending. I have to pretend to love him? After what I saw. Sarah, Vance said softly. You don't have to love him. You just have to hate him enough to be patient. Can you do that? I looked at myself in the motel mirror. My hair was messy, my eyes were red, but my jaw was set. I thought about Chloe's laugh. I thought about Ethan's boring-ass comment. Yes, I said. I can do that. Good. I'm sending a forensic accountant to meet you. We need to trace every penny. Go back to the hotel. Tell him you panicked. Cold feet. Anything. Just get back in that room before he wakes up. I hung up. I spent 10 minutes in the motel bathroom transforming myself. I used cold water to reduce the puffiness in my eyes. I put on makeup with the precision of a war painter. I put the oversized sweater away and changed back into the clothes I had worn to the hotel yesterday. I drove back to the Ritz-Carlton. The valet looked confused seeing me drive in at 8:30 a.m., but I just smiled and tossed him the keys. I took the elevator up to the suite. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird, but my face was calm. I slid the key card into the slot. The light turned green. I pushed the door open. Ethan was sitting on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, looking furious. When he saw me, his expression shifted instantly from anger to fake concern. Sarah. He stood up. Where the hell have you been? I woke up and you were gone. I've been calling you for hours. I took a deep breath. Showtime. I'm so sorry, Ethan, I said, forcing my voice to tremble just slightly. I got overwhelmed. The wedding, the pressure. I just needed to drive. I went to the beach to watch the sunrise. He studied me. He was looking for cracks. He was looking for suspicion. You left without your phone? He asked, suspicious. I just needed to disconnect, I lied smoothly. I needed to remember who I am. Who we are. I walked over to him and put my hands on his chest. It took every ounce of willpower not to recoil. I'm ready now. I'm ready to be your wife. He relaxed. The arrogance returned to his eyes. He bought it. Because he thought I was weak. He thought I was stupid. It's okay, babe, he said, pulling me into a hug. I held my breath so I wouldn't have to smell Chloe's perfume on him. I was just worried. But hey, we have a flight to catch. Italy awaits. Yes, I buried my face in his shoulder to hide the loathing in my eyes. Italy. Italy should have been a dream. We were staying in a villa on Lake Como, the kind of place where George Clooney might live. The water was a deep, impossible blue, and the mountains rose up like guardians around us. But for me, it was a prison. Every moment was a performance. When we walked through the cobblestone streets of Bellagio, I held his hand. My skin crawled every time his fingers interlaced with mine. When he ordered wine at dinner, I smiled and toasted to our future, fighting the urge to shatter the glass against the wall. Ethan was in high spirits. Why wouldn't he be? He thought he had pulled off the perfect crime. He was affectionate in public, draping his arm around me, kissing my temple for the cameras. He was building his family man brand for the board members back home. But in private, the mask slipped. God, this pasta is mediocre, he complained on our second night, pushing away a plate of handmade tagliatelle that was objectively delicious. I miss the food in New York. It's authentic, Ethan, I said gently. It's bland, he snapped. Then he checked his phone. He was always checking his phone. Work? I asked innocently. Yeah. Dad's writing me about the quarterly reports. You know how it is. He wasn't texting his dad. I knew because I had seen the reflection of his screen in the window. He was texting C. Miss you. This place is boring without you. I looked away, focusing on the candle in the center of the table. Patience, Vance had said. Hate him enough to be patient. The nights were the hardest. I had come prepared with a fabricated medical excuse, a severe yeast infection that I claimed flared up from stress. It was unglamorous, embarrassing to talk about, and absolutely perfect because it guaranteed he wouldn't touch me. Seriously, he had groaned on the first night. On our honeymoon? I'm so sorry, honey, I had said, feigning misery. It hurts so much. He had rolled over and gone to sleep without another word. No comfort. No tea. Just annoyance that his toy was broken. While he slept, I worked. Ethan was a heavy sleeper, especially after a bottle of Chianti. On the third night, while his snoring filled the master bedroom, I slipped out of bed. I crept into the living area where he had left his laptop bag. I didn't need to guess his password. Ethan was arrogant, and arrogant men are predictable. His password was Sterling CEO 2024. He had literally typed his ambition into the login screen. I opened the laptop. The light from the screen felt like a spotlight in the dark room. I worked quickly, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm. I bypassed his work email, too encrypted. I went straight to his personal Gmail. He had left it logged in. I searched for Chloe. Hundreds of emails. Going back 2 years. Subject, the plan. Subject, meeting with the lawyer. Subject, Sarah's birthday gift, make it look cheap. I opened one from last week. It was an attachment. A draft of a press release announcing their engagement, dated for 8 months from now. I felt sick. They had scripted my disposal down to the press release. Then I found the financial smoking gun. An email thread with a shady accountant in the Cayman Islands. From Ethan Sterling to J. Murkoff. Subject: Transfer approval. Move the next batch, $50,000, on Thursday. Use the authorization code from Sarah's device. ID, SJ off 992. Make sure it looks like negligence on her part if audited. I took photos of the screen with my phone. I forwarded the most damning emails to a secure, burner email address I had created with Vance. I downloaded the PDFs of the bank statements. What are you doing? I froze. The voice came from the bedroom doorway. I slammed the laptop shut. My heart stopped. I spun around in the chair. Ethan was standing there, rubbing his eyes, wearing only his boxer briefs. He looked groggy, confused. I couldn't sleep, I stammered. My brain scrambled for an excuse. I wanted to check on the itinerary for tomorrow. The boat tour? I wanted to make sure we had the right time. He squinted at me. The room was dark, lit only by the moonlight coming through the terrace doors. On my computer? He asked, his voice thick with sleep. My phone died, I lied. And I didn't want to wake you looking for the charger. He stood there for a terrifying 5 seconds. Then he yawned, scratching his chest. You worry too much, Sarah. It's a vacation. Come back to bed. He turned and shuffled back to the bed. I sat there, trembling. I had been seconds away from being caught. If he had been more awake, if he had walked over and seen the screen. I waited 10 minutes until his breathing evened out again. Then I wiped the browser history, wiped the recent documents list, and closed the laptop. I walked out onto the terrace. The lake was black and still. You want a war, Ethan? I thought, gripping the cold stone railing. You just armed the enemy. We returned home 3 days before the CEO announcement ceremony. Our house, a sprawling modern monstrosity in the hills that Ethan loved and I found cold, felt like a crime scene. Every room held a memory of a lie. I barely had time to unpack before the doorbell rang. Surprise! It was Chloe. She was standing on the porch holding a bottle of Dom Perignon and a basket of muffins. She looked radiant, wearing a designer sundress that I knew for a fact cost more than her rent. I wondered which consulting fee from my husband had paid for it. Welcome home, she squealed, pushing past me to hug me. She smelled like coconut and betrayal. I missed you guys so much. Tell me everything. Was Italy magical? I forced a smile. It felt like stretching rubber. It was intense. Very romantic. Ah, she cooed, walking into the kitchen like she owned it. She started unpacking the muffins. And Ethan? Is he excited for the big day? He's in the study, I said. Preparing. I'll just go say hi, she chirped, already heading down the hall. I watched her go. The audacity was breathtaking. She wasn't just my husband's mistress, she was playing the role of the supportive best friend to my face while stabbing me in the back. I went upstairs to unpack, but really, I went to check the mail. There was a stack of envelopes on the counter. Bills, flyers, and a thick envelope from the bank. I opened it. It was a notice of insufficient funds for our joint checking account. That couldn't be right. There should have been over $40,000 in there for household expenses. I logged into the banking app on my phone. Balance, $412. I scrolled through the history. There were dozens of withdrawals at ATMs and luxury boutiques in the last week. While we were in Italy. While I was in Italy with Ethan, someone had been using a duplicate card in our home city. The charges were at stores Chloe loved. Gucci. Sephora. A high-end lingerie shop. Ethan had given her a card linked to our joint account, the one I contributed my salary to, and let her go on a shopping spree while he distracted me in Europe. I felt a wave of nausea so strong I had to sit on the floor. It wasn't just the money. Money can be replaced. It was the violation. She was wearing clothes bought with my hard work to seduce my husband. My phone buzzed. It was Vance. Vance, we have the forensic report. It's worse than we thought. He's not just skimming profit. He's leveraging the company pension fund to cover bad real estate bets. If he becomes CEO, he'll have full access to drain the retirement accounts. He's going to bankrupt the employees, Sarah. I stared at the text. This wasn't just about me anymore. It wasn't just about my marriage or my pride. There were 500 employees at Sterling Corporation. People with families. People who had worked there for 30 years. Ethan was going to wipe out their life savings to fund his life with Chloe. I stood up. The sadness was gone. The fear was gone. All that was left was cold, hard determination. I walked downstairs. I could hear them whispering in the study. I paused by the door. She suspects nothing, Ethan was saying. She's busy picking out a dress for the ceremony. God, she's so predictable. Did you miss me? Chloe asked. Every second. Italy was torture. Just endless pasta and Sarah's whining. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed the bottle of Dom Perignon Chloe had brought, and poured it down the sink. Every last drop. Then I walked into the living room, sat down, and texted Vance. I'm ready. Let's burn him to the ground. Vance, the ceremony is in 48 hours. Bring the USB. And Sarah? Wear something red. I looked at my reflection in the hallway mirror. The tired, scared woman from the motel was gone. I wasn't Sarah the victim. I wasn't Sarah the boring wife. I was the CEO's biggest mistake. And in 48 hours, everyone was going to know it. The Sterling estate was a fortress of limestone and arrogance, perched on a cliff overlooking the city. It was the kind of house designed to make you feel small before you even stepped through the front door. We were there for the pre-coronation dinner, as Ethan called it. A quiet family meal before he was officially named CEO of Sterling Corp later that week. I wore a pale blue dress. Modest. Demure. The kind of dress a supportive wife wears to fade into the background. But underneath, my heart was beating like a war drum. Remember, Ethan muttered as we walked up the massive stone steps. He gripped my elbow, his fingers digging in painfully. Dad is old-fashioned. He wants to see harmony. Smile. Agree with everything I say. And for God's sake, don't bore him with details about your little projects. I know the drill, Ethan, I said softly, lowering my eyes. I'm just here to support you. Good. He adjusted his tie, checking his reflection in the glass door. Because after Thursday, everything changes. We're going to be royalty in this city. You have no idea, I thought. Dinner was served in a dining room that felt more like a museum. Arthur Sterling, the patriarch, sat at the head of the table. He was a man carved from granite, stern, intimidating, with eyes that missed nothing. He had built the company from a single hardware store into a multinational conglomerate, and he despised weakness. So, Arthur said, cutting into his steak with surgical precision. The board is ready. The press release is drafted. Are you ready, son? This isn't just a title. It's a burden. Ethan leaned back, swirling his wine glass. He looked too comfortable. Too cocky. I was born ready, Dad. I've got the vision. We're going to modernize. Cut the fat. Pivot to tech investments. And the pension fund? Arthur asked sharply. I promised those workers their futures were secure. You're not touching the conservative strategy there. Ethan didn't flinch, but I saw the slight twitch in his jaw. The tell. Of course not, Dad. The employees are family. Their security is my priority. Liar. I knew for a fact, thanks to the emails I'd hacked, that he had already leveraged 40% of the pension fund into high-risk cryptocurrency schemes and shell companies managed by Chloe. If the market dipped even a fraction, 500 families would lose everything. And you, Sarah? Arthur turned his gaze to me. It felt like a spotlight. Are you ready to be the CEO's wife? It's a lonely job. You have to be the rock when he's the storm. I put down my fork. I looked Arthur in the eye. This was the moment. The pivot point. I take my role very seriously, Arthur, I said, my voice steady. Actually, I wanted to ask. Ethan has been so overwhelmed with the transition. I've been trying to organize the final presentation files for the ceremony, but I keep hitting security blocks on the shared drive. I just want everything to be perfect for Thursday. I want him to shine. Ethan looked at me, surprised. He clearly hadn't expected me to volunteer to do actual work. But his laziness outweighed his suspicion. She's right, Ethan said, taking a sip of wine. I've been drowning in meetings. Sarah's just been helping me format the slides. She's good at the administrative stuff. He dismissed my career, my intelligence, and my worth in one sentence. Administrative stuff. Then give her the access, Arthur commanded. A good leader knows how to delegate. If your wife is willing to shoulder the load, let her. Ethan sighed, reached into his pocket, and pulled out a sleek, black USB key. It wasn't just a storage drive, it was a physical security token. The master key to the Sterling Corp internal servers. Here, he slid it across the mahogany table toward me. It spun slowly, stopping right next to my wine glass. Just don't delete anything important, okay, babe? And don't look at the strategy folder, it's too complicated for you. I picked up the key. It felt cold and heavy in my hand. I won't delete a thing, I promised, closing my fingers around it. I'll just make sure everything is exactly where it needs to be. I had it. The keys to the kingdom. The rest of the dinner was a blur of Ethan bragging and Arthur grilling him. I played my part perfectly. I laughed at Ethan's unfunny jokes. I nodded when he interrupted me. I was the picture of the submissive, adoring wife. As we were leaving, Arthur walked us to the door. He stopped me while Ethan was getting the car. Sarah, Arthur said, his voice lower. You're a smart woman. Smarter than my son gives you credit for. I froze. Did he know? Take care of him, Arthur said, a note of sadness in his eyes. He has his mother's charm, but he lacks discipline. I'm counting on you to keep him honest. I felt a pang of guilt. Arthur was a hard man, but he was an honorable one. He loved his son. And I was about to destroy his son's life. I will do what's right for the company, Arthur, I said carefully. I promise you that. He nodded, satisfied. He didn't know that doing what's right meant taking his son down. In the car ride home, Ethan was euphoric. Did you see that? He crowed, slapping the steering wheel. He's eating out of my hand. He's totally sold. I'm going to own this city, Sarah. We are, I corrected softly. Right. We. He glanced at me, his eyes gleaming with greed. Hey, when we get home, remind me to text Chloe. Chris. From accounting. Need to check some numbers. Sure, honey, I said, clutching the black USB key in my purse like a weapon. I'll remind you. We pulled into the driveway. The house was dark. But in my mind, I was already lighting the match. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in deception. I went to work. I cooked dinner. I ironed Ethan's shirts. And every moment he was in the shower, or on a call, or asleep, I was extracting data. The black USB key was a treasure trove. It didn't just have the presentation slides, it had the unredacted ledgers. It had the audit trails Ethan thought he had buried. I wasn't doing this alone. I had set up a war room in the back office of Vance's law firm. It was a windowless room filled with whiteboards, coffee cups, and the hum of servers. I met Vance there on Wednesday afternoon, feigning a spa day to Ethan, Look at this, I said, pointing to the screen where a forensic accountant named Marcus was working. Marcus was a quiet man with thick glasses who got excited about fraud patterns. It's a Ponzi scheme, Marcus said, shaking his head in disbelief. A classic, stupid Ponzi scheme nested inside a corporate structure. He's taking cash from the pension fund, funneling it into CM Consulting, that's your friend Chloe, and then using that money to pay off the interest on his personal gambling debts and real estate losses. Then he moves money from the construction budget to refill the pension fund temporarily before the quarterly audit. He's juggling dynamite, Vance muttered, chewing on an unlit cigar. And the timer runs out on Thursday, I added. Once he's CEO, he has the authority to change the audit schedule. He plans to delay the external audit for 6 months. That's the 6 months he was talking about in the hotel room. 6 months to steal as much as he can and then divorce you, Vance finished. Leaving you with the debt and him with the cash in the Caymans. Exactly. I pulled up a new document. But here's the nail in the coffin. Look at the beneficiary designation on the shell company. Marcus zoomed in. Beneficiary, Sarah Jenkins Sterling. He forged my signature, I said, my voice trembling with rage. If this collapses, the trail leads to me. I'm the fall guy. He's not just leaving me, Vance. He's framing me for a federal crime. Vance slammed his hand on the table. That son of a bitch. This isn't divorce court anymore, Sarah. This is prison time. We have enough to put him away for 20 years. I don't just want him in prison, I said, staring at the whiteboard where I had taped a picture of Ethan and Chloe laughing. I want him destroyed. I want his father to see exactly who he is. I want the board to see it. I want the whole city to see it. The ceremony, Vance said, a slow smile spreading across his face. It's being live-streamed, isn't it? To all global offices and major shareholders, I confirmed. Perfect. Vance handed me a new, silver USB drive. Marcus has compiled everything. The video from the hotel. The emails. The bank transfers. The forged signatures. It's all here, embedded into a PowerPoint presentation. How do I get it on the screen? I asked. You said you're helping him with the slides, right? Vance raised an eyebrow. Help him. I took the silver drive. It felt lighter than the black one, but I knew it carried more weight. I drove home, my mind racing. When I walked through the door, I found Chloe sitting on my living room sofa. Again. She was painting her toenails on my coffee table. Ethan was pouring drinks at the bar. Hey stranger. Chloe chirped, not even looking up. We were just talking about the victory party tomorrow night. Ethan says he's going to buy a yacht. A small yacht, Ethan corrected, winking at her. Something humble. I stood there, looking at my husband and my best friend. They looked so comfortable. So secure in their villainy. They really thought they had won. They looked at me and saw a doormat. That sounds exciting, I said, walking over to the bar. I poured myself a sparkling water. I actually finished the presentation slides, Ethan. I think you're going to love the new graphics. I made them really pop. Great, Ethan said dismissively. Just load it onto the master laptop. I don't need to review it. I'm going to wing the speech anyway. Charisma, right? Right, I said. Charisma. Chloe blew on her toes. Make sure you wear something nice tomorrow, Sarah. Try not to look so beige. I smiled. A real smile this time. It was the smile of the wolf looking at the sheep. Don't worry, Chloe, I said softly. I'm not wearing beige. I'm wearing red. That night, I lay in bed next to Ethan for the last time. He was snoring, dreaming of his millions. I stared at the ceiling, rehearsing my lines. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was electrified. I reached out and touched the silver USB drive on my nightstand. It was cold. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow the house of cards comes down. The grand ballroom of the Sterling Plaza Hotel smelled of lilies and money. It was a sea of black tuxedos and glittering gowns. The air hummed with the murmur of 300 of the city's most powerful people, investors, politicians, tech moguls, and the press. Cameras were positioned at every angle, red lights blinking, ready to broadcast the coronation of the new king. I stood in the wings of the stage, watching the room fill up. I was not wearing beige. I was wearing a dress I had bought specifically for this moment. It was a blood-red silk gown, structured and sharp, with a neckline that plunged just enough to be dangerous and a slit up the leg that said I wasn't hiding. I wore stiletto heels that clicked like gunshots on the floor. My hair was pulled back in a severe, sleek bun. My lips were painted a matching crimson. When I had walked out of the dressing room earlier, Ethan had stopped dead in his tracks. "Whoa," he had said, blinking. "That's aggressive. Are you sure that's appropriate? You look like you're going to a vampire ball." "It's a power color, Ethan," I had replied, fixing his tie. "You want a power couple, don't you?" He had shrugged, too distracted by his own reflection to argue. "Just don't stand too close to me in the photos. You'll clash with the company blue." Now, he was out in the crowd, shaking hands, clapping shoulders, playing the golden boy. Chloe was there too, sitting in the third row, technically in the friends and family section. She was wearing a white dress. White. As if she were the bride. The symbolism was so gross it was almost funny. She caught my eye and gave me a little smug wave, mouthing, "Smile." I didn't smile. I checked my clutch. The silver USB drive was plugged into the presentation laptop sitting on the podium. I had swapped it 5 minutes ago while the AV tech was getting coffee. The lights dimmed. A hush fell over the room. Arthur Sterling took the stage. He looked frail under the stage lights, but his voice was as booming as ever. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began. 40 years ago, I built this company on a foundation of trust. Integrity. Hard work. Today, I pass that torch to the next generation." Applause rippled through the room. I saw Ethan beaming, bouncing on the balls of his feet. "My son, Ethan," Arthur continued, gesturing to him. "He has the energy, the vision, and the partner," he gestured vaguely toward where I was standing, "to lead us into the future. Please welcome your new CEO, Ethan Sterling." The music swelled. The crowd cheered. Ethan bounded up the stairs, shaking his father's hand, hugging him for the cameras. He took the podium, gripping the sides with both hands, soaking in the adulation. "Thank you. Thank you everyone," Ethan shouted over the applause. He looked handsome, charming, and completely fraudulent. "I am humbled," he lied. "I stand here today not just as a businessman, but as a man who values loyalty above all else." I almost laughed out loud. Loyalty. "I have big plans for Sterling Corp," Ethan went on. "We are going to innovate. We are going to expand. And we are going to do it with transparency." He clicked the remote to advance the slide. The screen behind him lit up with the company logo. "But first," Ethan said, looking toward the wings where I stood, "I want to invite my wife, Sarah, to the stage. She's been my rock. My support. Come on out here, honey." This was unscripted. He wanted a prop. He wanted the dutiful wife to stand next to him and look adoring while he accepted the crown. I took a deep breath. The adrenaline hit me like a physical blow, sharpening my vision, slowing down time. I walked out onto the stage. The red dress caught the light, blazing against the blue backdrop. A murmur went through the crowd. I wasn't walking like a prop. I was walking like a predator. I reached the podium. Ethan moved to put his arm around my waist, but I sidestepped him. I moved directly to the microphone. "Thank you, Ethan," I said. My voice was steady, amplified through the massive speakers. It didn't shake. Ethan looked confused. He tried to smile, but his eyes darted nervously. Sarah? You want to say a few words? Yes, I said, looking out at the sea of faces. I saw Arthur in the front row, looking proud. I saw Chloe in the third row, looking confused. I saw the cameras. Before Ethan accepts this position, I said, he wanted to share a very special presentation with you all. A look at the real cost of his success. Sarah, what are you doing? Ethan hissed, his hand reaching for the microphone. Stick to the script. I whispered back, leaning in close so only he could hear. Just not your script. I reached past him and hit the spacebar on the laptop. The company logo on the giant screen flickered and vanished. In its place, a video began to play. It wasn't a corporate sizzle reel. It was grainy footage, shot from a low angle through a crack in a door. Audio filled the silent ballroom. She's just my ticket to the CEO seat. Once Dad signs the papers. I'm dumping her boring ass. The sound of Ethan's voice, distinct and undeniable, echoed off the vaulted ceiling. The crowd gasped. It was a collective, sucked-in breath that sucked the oxygen out of the room. On screen, the image shifted. It was clear as day. Ethan, shirtless. Chloe, in her bridesmaid dress. The date stamp in the corner was glowing, September 14th. 1:15 a.m. Ethan froze. He looked at the screen, then at me, his face draining of all color. He looked like a wax figure melting under heat. Turn it off, he screamed, lunging for the laptop. Turn it off. It's a fake. It's AI. But I was faster. I grabbed the remote and clicked the next slide. The video cut. Up popped a spreadsheet. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice cutting through the rising murmur of shock. What you just saw was my husband on our wedding night. But adultery is a personal matter. What you are seeing now is a felony. I pointed to the screen. This is the transaction history of the Sterling Employee Pension Fund. Note the transfers to CM Consulting. Note the dates. Security. Ethan yelled, his voice cracking. Get her off the stage. She's crazy. She's having a breakdown. I'm not having a breakdown, Ethan, I said, locking eyes with him. I'm having an audit. Chaos is a strange thing. It doesn't happen all at once. It ripples. First, there was the silence of shock. Then, the murmurs of confusion. And now, the roar of realization. The giant screen behind me was cycling through the evidence Marcus had compiled. It was a slideshow of damnation. Slide 3, a copy of the email Ethan sent to the Cayman Islands. Subject, hide the assets. Slide 4, a split screen showing Chloe's shopping receipts for Gucci bags next to the withdrawals from the employee retirement accounts. Slide 5, the forged document with my signature, overlaid with a digital forensic analysis proving the IP address came from Ethan's phone. Ethan was frantic. He was slamming keys on the laptop, trying to kill the feed, but I had locked the presentation in kiosk mode with a password he would never guess. It was unstoppable. Dad! Ethan screamed, looking down at the front row. Dad, stop her. She's lying. She hacked the system. I looked down at Arthur Sterling. The old man wasn't moving. He was sitting in his chair, his face a mask of absolute horror. He was staring up at the screen, reading the numbers. He knew these accounts. He knew the codes. He didn't need a forensic accountant to tell him what he was looking at. He was watching his legacy being cannibalized by his own son. It's not a hack, Arthur, I said into the microphone, addressing him directly. It's the ledger. The unredacted ledger from the black USB key Ethan gave me. The one he told me not to look at. I turned back to the crowd. The cameras were flashing blindingly now. The press photographers were rushing the stage. Ethan planned to bankrupt this company, I announced, my voice ringing out with cold clarity. He planned to steal the pension fund, divorce me, frame me for the theft, and run off with his mistress. I clicked the remote one last time. The screen changed to a live feed of the audience. A camera operator had found Chloe. There she was, projected 40 feet high. She was trying to hide her face with her purse, shrinking into her seat. Her white dress, which had looked so smug earlier, now made her look like a ghost. "That's Chloe Miller," I said. "My maid of honor. And the recipient of $2 million of stolen pension money." The crowd turned on her. You could feel the hostility shift. It was physical. People in the row behind her stood up, moving away as if she were contagious. "No!" Chloe shrieked, her voice shrill and terrified. "I didn't know. He told me it was his money. Sarah, please." "She's lying," Ethan yelled. He had given up on the laptop and was now coming for me. His face was twisted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. The charm was gone. The handsome mask had peeled away to reveal the rat underneath. "You bitch," he screamed, lunging at me. "You think you can humiliate me? I am Sterling Corp. I own you." He raised his hand. He was going to hit me. On stage. In front of everyone. I didn't flinch. I didn't step back. But he never reached me. A cane hooked around Ethan's arm, jerking him back with surprising force. It was Arthur. The old man had climbed the stairs to the stage faster than anyone expected. He stood between me and his son, breathing hard, his face purple with fury. "Dad," Ethan gasped, stumbling back. "Dad, listen, let me explain. It's a setup. She's jealous because," slap. The sound echoed through the microphone. It was a crack like a whip. Arthur had backhanded his son across the face. It wasn't a playful tap. It was a blow that knocked Ethan to his knees. The room went deathly silent. "You," Arthur snarled, his voice trembling with a rage that was terrifying to behold. "You stole from my workers? You stole from the people who built this family?" "Dad, I just borrowed it." Ethan whimpered, holding his cheek. "I was going to put it back. The crypto market is bouncing back, I swear." "You are a disgrace," Arthur spat. He looked down at his son with eyes that held no love, only disgust. "You are not a Sterling. Not anymore." Arthur turned to the wings. "Security. Get the police in here. Now." Ethan scrambled to his feet, looking around wildly. His eyes landed on me. He looked at me with a mix of hatred and pleading. "Sarah," he said, his voice shaking. "Sarah, stop this. We're married. You can't testify against me. Spousal privilege. You can't send me to jail." I stepped up to him. I looked him dead in the eye. The camera zoomed in. This was the moment. "Actually, Ethan," I said, my voice calm, cool, and deadly. "I spoke to my lawyer this morning. Spousal privilege doesn't apply when the spouse is the victim of the fraud. And since you forged my signature to frame me." I leaned in closer, so he could see the red lipstick smile. "I'm the star witness." Police officers flooded the ballroom. They weren't the hotel security, they were the actual city police, led by a detective Vance had briefed an hour ago. They marched onto the stage. "Ethan Sterling," the detective said, pulling out cuffs. "You are under arrest for embezzlement, securities fraud, and identity theft." "No, no, no." Ethan struggled as they spun him around. "Look at my suit. You can't arrest me. I'm the CEO." "Not anymore," Arthur said coldly, turning his back on his son. As they dragged Ethan away, he was screaming my name. Screaming threats. Screaming promises. I watched him go. I felt light. Weightless. Then I looked into the crowd. Officers were escorting Chloe out too. She wasn't screaming. She was crying, her mascara running down her face in black streaks, ruining her white dress. She looked up at me as she passed the stage. I didn't wave. I just stood there, in my red dress, surrounded by the ruins of their empire. Arthur Sterling walked over to the microphone. He looked 10 years older than he had 10 minutes ago. He adjusted his tie. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "The ceremony is cancelled. But, justice is not." He turned to me. He extended his hand. "Sarah," he said. "Thank you." I took his hand. The crowd erupted. Not in polite applause, but in a roar of shock and, surprisingly, approval. I had walked onto that stage as a victim. I was walking off as a legend. The aftermath of an explosion is always quieter than you expect. The ballroom had cleared out, leaving only the cleaning crew sweeping up confetti that never got to fall. I was sitting in the VIP holding room backstage. My heels were off. My red dress was wrinkled. The door opened. It wasn't the police. It wasn't Vance. It was Ethan. He was in cuffs, flanked by 2 officers and his high-priced lawyer, a man who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. They had allowed him 5 minutes to retrieve personal effects before transport, mostly because Arthur had pulled strings to let me have this moment. Ethan looked wrecked. His tie was gone. His shirt was torn. His hair, usually gelled to perfection, was wild. When he saw me, he didn't scream. He just stared. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a terrifying emptiness. "Are you happy?" he rasped. His voice was hoarse. I sipped my water. "Happy isn't the word, Ethan." Relieved is closer. "You ruined my life," he said. "Over what? A mistake? A fling? A mistake?" I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You didn't make a mistake, Ethan. You made a plan. You planned to steal my dignity, my money, and my freedom. You planned to put me in jail so you could live on a yacht with Chloe." He took a step toward me, but the officer yanked him back. "I made you," he spat. "You were nobody before me. Just a boring project manager with cheap shoes. I gave you the Sterling name." I stood up. I walked over to him, stopping just out of spitting range. "You didn't make me, Ethan," I said. "You underestimated me. That was your fatal flaw. You saw boring where you should have seen competent. You saw quiet where you should have seen observant." I leaned in. "You treated me like a stepping stone," I said, delivering the line I had rehearsed in my head 1,000 times. "But you forgot that stones can shatter glass houses. Your game is over." He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. He had no comeback. No charm. No lies left. "And by the way," I added, glancing at his lawyer, "I cancelled the transfer to the Cayman Islands right before I went on stage. I used the security key. The money is back in the pension fund. You're broke, Ethan. You can't even afford this lawyer." The lawyer looked up, alarmed. "Is that true?" I nodded. "Check the accounts. He has 0 assets. And since the prenup had a cheating clause." I held up my phone, showing the video thumbnail. "I get the house." Ethan let out a sound that was half sob, half growl. He slumped against the wall, defeated. The reality was finally sinking in. No money. No girl. No company. No freedom. "Take him away," I said to the officers. They dragged him out. He didn't look back. 10 minutes later, Vance walked in. He was grinning from ear to ear. "You were terrifying out there," he said. "Remind me never to cross you." "Is it done?" I asked. "Arthur is pressing full charges," Vance said. "He's not protecting him. He's furious about the pension fund. That was his legacy. Ethan is looking at 15 to 20 years. Chloe is looking at 5 to 10 for conspiracy and wire fraud. She's already trying to cut a deal, blaming everything on Ethan. Of course she is, I sighed. Rats eat each other when the ship sinks. And Arthur wants to see you, Vance added. Tomorrow. In his office. Am I in trouble? No, Vance shook his head. I think you're about to get a job offer. I walked out of the hotel. The paparazzi were waiting outside, a wall of flashing lights. They shouted questions. Sarah. Sarah. Did you know? Sarah. How do you feel? Sarah. What are you going to do now? I stopped on the steps. I put on my sunglasses, even though it was night. I didn't answer them. I just got into my Honda Accord, my reliable, paid-for car, and drove away. I went back to the house on the hill. It was empty. The silence wasn't oppressive anymore. It was peaceful. I walked into the closet. I took Ethan's suits, his bespoke, Italian silk suits, and I threw them onto the floor. I didn't burn them. That would be dramatic. Instead, I packed them into trash bags. I would donate them to a job program for ex-convicts. I thought the irony was fitting. I poured myself a glass of wine, cheap wine, the kind I liked, not the vintage stuff Ethan insisted on, and sat on the patio. I looked out at the city lights. I was alone. I was single. My wedding had been a sham. My best friend was a criminal. My heart was bruised. But I was free. And for the first time in 3 years, I could breathe. The next 6 months were a blur of courtrooms, depositions, and headlines. The fall of the Sterling Prince. The bride who bit back. From altar to arraignment. I became a minor celebrity. Strangers stopped me in the grocery store to high-five me. Women sent me messages saying I had inspired them to check their own husbands' bank accounts. I had become the patron saint of scorned women. But I wasn't focused on the fame. I was focused on the cleanup. The divorce was swift. The judge, an intimidating woman named Judge Coleman, barely looked at Ethan during the proceedings. When his public defender tried to argue for spousal support, Judge Coleman actually laughed. Mr. Sterling, she said, peering over her glasses. You are currently awaiting trial for stealing millions. You attempted to frame your wife. You are lucky she isn't suing you for emotional distress on top of everything else. Request denied. Marriage annulled due to fraud. Just like that. Annulled. It was as if I had never been married to him. I was Sarah Jenkins again. Ethan's trial was the event of the season. I testified for 3 days. I sat on the stand, calm and collected, and walked the jury through the spreadsheets. I explained the shell companies. I explained the forged signatures. Ethan refused to look at me the entire time. He had lost weight. He looked gray and small in his orange jumpsuit. Chloe testified too. She had taken a plea deal, agreeing to testify against Ethan in exchange for a reduced sentence. She cried on the stand, playing the victim. She claimed Ethan had manipulated her, that she was just a girl in love. But the prosecutor played the recording from the hotel room. Her voice, "I hate seeing you hold her hand. It makes me sick," filled the courtroom. The jury didn't buy her tears. Ethan was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. Chloe got 6 years. When the gavel banged down, I didn't feel joy. I felt a heavy, deep exhaustion. It was finally over. The poison was out of the system. I walked out of the courthouse and found Arthur Sterling waiting for me by his town car. Sarah, he said. He looked tired, but he stood tall. Arthur, I nodded. I wanted to tell you personally, he said. The board met this morning. We've recovered 95% of the pension fund thanks to your quick action with the security key. The employees are safe. I'm glad, I said. They didn't deserve this. Neither did you, Arthur said. He hesitated. The CEO position is open. We're looking for an interim replacement. Someone who knows the books. Someone who pays attention to details. I stared at him. Was he offering me the job? I appreciate it, Arthur, I said slowly. But I think I've had enough of the Sterling family drama for one lifetime. I don't want to fix your company. I want to build my own life. Arthur smiled. It was a genuine smile. I figured you'd say that. But the offer stands. And, keep the house. I bought out the mortgage. It's yours. Free and clear. Consider it a bonus for saving the company. I drove back to the big house on the hill. It was mine now. Legally. I walked through the empty rooms. I thought about selling it. Too many bad memories. But then I walked out to the pool. I looked at the view. Why should I leave? I had fought for this ground. I had won this ground. I decided to keep it. But I was going to renovate. I was going to paint over the sterile white walls with color. I was going to turn Ethan's man cave into a library. I was going to fill the house with things I liked. I started a consulting firm the next week. Jenkins Risk Management. My slogan was, "We see what you miss." Business boomed immediately. Companies wanted the woman who had taken down Ethan Sterling to audit their books. I hired Marcus, the forensic accountant, as my partner. We became the terror of corrupt executives everywhere. I visited Chloe in prison once. Just once. She was sitting behind the glass, wearing a shapeless gray uniform. Her roots were showing. She looked old. "Why did you come?" she asked sullenly. "Closure," I said. "Are you going to gloat?" "No," I said. "I just wanted to thank you." She blinked. "What?" "If you hadn't been so greedy," I said. "If you hadn't pushed him to steal the pension fund. I might have stayed. I might have wasted my whole life being his boring wife. You woke me up, Chloe. You set me free." I stood up to leave. "Sarah," she called out, her voice cracking. "I'm sorry." "Okay? I'm sorry." I paused at the door. "I know," I said. "But sorry doesn't pay the rent." 1 year later. I am sitting in a cafe in Positano, Italy. The real Italy this time. Not the fake honeymoon version where I had to fake smiles and hide my laptop. The sun is warm on my face. The coffee is rich and dark. The lemon trees smell like heaven. I am alone, but I am not lonely. I check my phone. An email from Marcus. Subject: Another one bites the dust. Message: The audit on the Tech Global merger is complete. We found the hidden debt. The client is thrilled. Bonus incoming. I smile and type back, "Great work. Take the team out for drinks." On me. I put the phone down. I don't check it every 5 minutes. I don't worry about who is texting me. A waiter places a plate of pasta in front of me. It's handmade tagliatelle. "Grazie," I say. I take a bite. It's delicious. It's perfect. I think about the girl I was a year ago. The girl standing in the hallway of the Ritz-Carlton, shivering in her bare feet, listening to her husband laugh about destroying her. I want to reach back through time and hug her. I want to tell her, "It's going to be hell, but you're going to come out of it made of steel." People ask me if I'm bitter. They ask if I hate men now. I tell them no. Hate is too much work. Hate requires energy that I would rather spend on myself. I date occasionally. I met a nice architect named David a few weeks ago. He's kind. He listens. He doesn't hide his phone. But I'm taking it slow. I'm not looking for someone to complete me. I'm already complete. I learned a hard lesson, but a valuable one. We are taught as women to be accommodating. To be the cool girl. To smooth over the rough edges. To trust blindly because love is supposed to conquer all. But love without respect is just a transaction. And trust without verification is just naivety. Ethan Sterling thought I was a spreadsheet reader. He was right. I read the spreadsheet of our life, and I found the error. I deleted him. I finish my pasta and order a glass of wine. I raise it to the empty seat across from me. To Sarah, I whisper. The CEO of her own life. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and violent violet. It's breathtaking. If you are listening to this story, and you feel small, if you feel like someone is treating you like a stepping stone, remember this: you are not the stone. You are the builder. You can build a castle, or you can build a prison for the people who hurt you. The choice is yours. But whatever you do, never, ever forget to check the phone under the pillow. And always, always keep the receipts. Good night, everyone. Take care of yourselves. And take no prisoners.